So here we are. We're going to be having another adventure with an amazing young woman in our community of Flin Flon. We have Sophia Charuk from Uptown Emporium and many, many other things. She's actually on the board of the Women's Resource Centre. I think she's about 2 other committees she's now joined in the last probably a couple of months. But Sophia has an amazing story about how she came here to our community that we're going to talk about, and in light of also her passion for all things involved with the environment. So Sophia, it's so great to talk to you. I've met Sophia just a few months ago, actually, when we opened up the Uptown Emporium, and you have this amazing creative energy. Like, where did that come from?
Oh, thank you very much. I grew up with an amazing set of creative women. My great-grandmother, I had 4 generations before me to see. And so my great-grandmother was a seamstress and also writer for El Espectador, which is a Colombian newspaper where Garcia Marquez worked at, actually.
Wow.
But she's her own Wonder Woman. You know, she was working 2 jobs and taking care of the kids and making sure that, you know, everything was handled. And my grandmother followed in her footsteps, so she became a businesswoman, and she came to the United States and immigrated and brought her family there. And then we became a military family, but you know, our roots are still very deep. Before that, they had come from the farm, and our grandfather was an artisan, so he made
what field?
He made horse. What are they called again? Horse. Oh my goodness, saddles. He was a saddle maker. He was a saddle maker. Yes, and we still have some of his saddles and his leather chairs. He also made these beautiful baby leather chairs, and yeah, like very old school. We even have the old sharpening rock that we had for our knives from the farm. But yeah, so I came from a family of artisans. So my grandmother picked up. That's why she picked up sewing, was because she'd see her father leatherwork. And she was very interested in the funny story with that. She actually stole his best horse and sold it to buy her first sewing machine. And when he found out, she thought she was done. But when he found out, he was actually so proud that she took that initiative, that he gave her that room to foster that creativity.
And this was back in the U.S. at this point?
No, this is in Colombia, old country. The old country for me. But yeah, so they in my family, I was very lucky to sort of have that that archetype, I guess, where it's like, if you want to do something creative and you do the work, that's the thing, is that, you know, my family, they're not going to give you things for free. But if you're willing to put in the work, then you're allowed. You know, you're given that space. And that was super important for me growing up, because I had an affinity for both the arts and the environment. And so I really wanted to find, you know, artistic mediums that incorporated. Growing up in South Florida, it's summer year round. So I was always outside, you know, playing especially with the plants. And to me, I loved anything that had to do with plants, saving plants in books, or, you know, making perfume, like anything to do with flowers and plants. I was obsessed with as a child. And luckily they said, all right, well, if this is what you're interested in, let's get you some more books. Let's find some other ways to foster it. And that's when I really got into science. I found out that science was my forte, especially biology. I still love biology. Eventually I want to go back and maybe get a degree in chemistry, specifically because I want to work in lab work. And that's something that maybe I'd like to bring here to Flin Flon, because Flin Flon is a hub for labs. We've got our health lab here. We've got the Hud Bay Industrial Lab, and those are huge driving forces for the community, because we can test for our environmental samples, we test for mining samples, we test for health samples. So those are, and it's such a, like, it is an art. You know, anybody that does lab work, they are artists, because in order to calibrate the machines and run and know how the machine likes to be ran and the processes and everything, You have to have a passion for it
Yeah.
to do it well. And it's something that here in the North, with all of the resources we have access to, it's an absolute asset. But in the last few years, it's something that it's slowed down in. But I would love to see that brought back.
Wow, you go girl.
Yeah, I did not answer your question.
No, I think that's
But yes.
about things. You could just so you grew up in, you said Florida, and then what brought you how many thousands of miles north to Flin Flon, Manitoba? Flin Flon, Manitoba is 800 kilometers north of Winnipeg, which some people in the U.S. would consider north.
Yeah, well, we call this the Arctic. So I remember when actually, I lived in California at the time, and I love is what brought me here. I fell in love, but I was working at a Gracie Jiu-Jitsu gym, and so I was actually a sport that I had started back in Florida, and I moved to California, and I found finally there was a Gracie Academy that had opened up a couple of years earlier, and so I signed up and interacted with the instructors, and we hit it off really well. So they decided to hire me as manager, and so that was pretty fun. And then when I got to see all of our teams come in for Worlds, which is an international competition. That's when I met my husband-to-be, Baron. He came in down from Winnipeg. He was representing the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu Winnipeg team, and he came in, like a beautiful flow of God. I was like, oh, I love Canada. I love everything about Canada. and apparently he loved me too, so we got together. And the rest is history, because I pretty much kidnapped him. He was only supposed to be in the States for 2 weeks, and I kept him for 2 years.
Well done, both of you. I just have to say it's working well for us here.
Yeah,
having you
when his parents actually came down to visit us, and they said, you have to come up to Flin Flon and see Flin Flon. And for me, not ever being exposed to snow, ever. I was like very nervous and kind of scared, but they kind of held my hand, and they said, we've got everything. We've got boots, we've got clothing, you don't have to worry about anything. So I said, okay. And when I came here, not to Winnipeg, because when I got to Winnipeg, I was like, hey, it actually Winnipeg looked familiar to me, especially in comparison to San Diego. But when I came to Flin Flon, just the drive was so, it's serenity is all I can say. Serenity. Coming up here, it was so beautiful, and seeing all the white on the trees and the peacefulness. It was no traffic here.
Yeah. Yes, that's true.
We came up here, and I just fell in love with the topography of this place. Like, there's rock and lakes and snow, and it's so unique.
So you've been here for how many years?
5 years now.
5 years, wow. Okay, so you're a Flin Floner.
Yes, I am passionate about Flin Flon. I love this place. It's like my own.
It's a really great place to live. You have everything. You have everything, really. It's really a wonderful place. I wanted to chat a little bit. We had a fun conversation when I first met you about San Diego and the Main Street there, and how the transition that happened there.
Yes,
is something that you would like to see happening here.
So one thing that really drew me to San Diego, well, one of the main reasons why I love San Diego is because it's a comic. It's Comic-Con.
Comic-Con is big in our family too. I know it's Comic-Con. Why mention it? It's a big thing.
It is. It's such an important, especially for kids, especially for artsy kids, who just live their lives through these comic books, as I did. Yeah, it was so special, but it was even more special to know that. So San Diego is a military town, and it's a service industry based town. So basically we make our money, our GDP, through the car industries or through the restaurant business, basically tourism. Mm-hmm. And so there was a point in time where San Diego was really suffering, and that was in the 70s. Late 60s and early 70s, it really became run down and decrepit, and there was lots of violence all around. And so they were looking for something to bring back the economy. And And one of the things that sort of popped up that really wasn't in anybody's mind was this, in the basement of the Grand Hotel, this little comic book convention. And so eventually that grew and grew and grew, and lots of people had interest, and it was originally just for the artists, you know, kind of thing. Not really just for the artists, for everybody, but, you know, it was something that was
feeding the artists.
Feeding the artists, yeah. It was, you know, a great place to network and to share ideas, and that's what it was for. It's like a hub. From the Grand Hotel, eventually they built a convention center specific for the San Diego Comic-Con. And so what was fascinating about that story is San Diego had been falling to pieces. Nobody really wanted to invest into the town, and it was seen just as a pit stop for the military and not much else. LA was sort of the crown jewel, yes. So to speak. So with Comic-Con and sort of this little revolution of artistry, people started to gain interest in San Diego as sort of an escape from the chaos of LA. And so then they started developing the arts community into what it is now, the giant thing that is Comic-Con, and that actually brought back our economy from death. So it was, we really were a town where nobody wanted to invest in because it was so violent and again run down. The hotels that people are now paying an exorbitant amount of money for were once hotels that were used for illegal activity. You know, and nobody wanted to touch them. They were so run down. They thought that they were going to have to knock them down. One of them was the hotel. Not, what is it called? Oh my goodness, I can't remember now.
But but one of the reasons I was mentioning this was a conversation that we were having was the role of art and environment, because we're just sort of celebrating that part of it, and that's just such a great example how when you put those two things together, you get the MacBook or or this beautiful Main Street on San Diego or anything in the world. Really.
Absolutely, it completely revitalized the downtown. They took buildings that were literally, they had already fallen apart, and they took them brick by brick and rebuilt them. Really? In the heart of downtown. And they're stunning, and they're pieces of history that had they not taken that initiative to save them, we wouldn't have them in San Diego. It's so what brought us back. And the economy that we get, you know, from Comic-Con, it's like we have tourism, we have artists. I knew artists in San Diego who made their living just for the 3 days in Comic-Con because they were seamstresses that made costumes for these elaborate, beautiful costumes that took care of their commission for the year. And so it really helped foster just a network of people that wanted to push for an improvement of the overall standard of living. And I think that was super important as well.
So just finishing off here, so but what wisdom would you like to share? You are full of wisdom. I don't know how you do that in being so young. But what wisdom would you like to impart to to men, women, you know, about life in general?
Just do it. If there's anything that life has taught me, if you're feeling apprehensive about something that deep down inside you have a passion for, don't. Just do it. Just put yourself out there, and even if you make mistakes and you fall and you kind of cringe a little bit at yourself because you didn't exactly pull it off as perfectly as you'd like, you keep going because you're going to build that muscle memory and you're going to get better and you're going to find your groove. And that is what makes change, because your pioneers, they go through some rough stuff, right? You know, adventure is not always fun and games, but you know what, if you can pick yourself up from the challenges, you're going to be so much stronger and be able to accomplish those dreams that you have for yourself, and even dreams that you would have never thought about.
Sophia Charuk, and wishing everybody a wonderful International Women's Week, and have a wonderful celebration. So we're here with our amazing Deb Odegaardn from the Recycling Centre, and this sequence of women that we're going to be celebrating has to do with the environment and the love of the environment. And so Deb, like I said, has been for how many years have you been running?
Oh, I mean, the Recycling Centers, the recycling program officially started in November of 1992. So we will be 30 years late next year. So
92. We arrived in 95, and I thought it had started just after that, but it was just before we arrived.
it got more established afterwards.
Yeah.
We started outside.
Okay.
We were in the market garden working out of a semi-trailer for till December of 94. And it really got going in terms of even having a paid employee in our own building and that sort of thing in 96. So that's probably what you're remembering as getting going.
Yeah. 'Cause I remember, we had this program called Read to Me, started by Mark Workington, and so that's one of the ways I had a chance to meet, and there were so many interesting facts that were starting to come through the community about recycling and the importance of it, and how accessible and easy it is, and the amazing products that were coming out at the time. So for me, this was such a novel thing.
And there was a lot of things happening behind the scenes that made it easy and accessible. You know, there was just, you know, you can take your recycling somewhere, but then where does it go?
Right.
You know, you have to have a place where it goes, and you have to be able to pay the shipping. You know, those kinds of things.
So, with all of that, Deb, what was your journey getting to this point? What inspired you?
Oh, well, you know, I think where I was born and when I was born, because I grew up on a farm, and we had a creek north of our place and a hill. Actually, we called it the hill because on the prairies, the hills aren't very common. And there was birds and all sorts of things down there, and when you're on the farm, you have animals you're living with, and growing seasons and all that sort of stuff. So you become very aware of the environment and how it interacts. And then the other thing was, I was also born into a family with a Christian faith that was of the Mennonite heritage, which we were more conservative, so I dressed differently, we were pacifists, that sort of stuff. So I grew up with that idea of you need to look deeper into what you're doing and how it's affecting things. And then it was the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah.
You know, so there was a lot of environmental concern.
It was like an awakening.
Women's movement, socialized, a lot of an awakening. And so that really affected me because that was my growing up years. And I went to college in Kansas, and I was studying early childhood development, childcare, that sort of thing, but the foundational studies, you know, like the sciences and the maths and all that stuff, they rolled into a package that was more practical. They called it foundation studies, and the science piece really focused on the environment and said, in fact, I still have my textbook called Replenish the Earth. I still look at it sometimes. And so I always thought that was the impetus where I really started thinking about environment. But then I was going through some stuff, and I found a grade 5 paper on air pollution. So I guess I was concerned about the environment before college, but that really brought a lot of it out when I was in college.
Getting to where you were, you have a family, and you're always, I know you're a busy woman and you're involved with so many things in the community. So how did you make time to be able to get to the point to have a position like this?
With the Environment Council, well, what happened was when I first moved here, I moved here in 1984 for a year to teach early childhood education, and I was gone for 9 months, but I've been here ever since. And I was working for the Manitoba government as the licensing person for early childhood education and childcare facilities and that sort of thing. But it was part-time. It was 25 hours a week. I had no kids at the time. And I had this environmental concern, and it was right at the end of that roundtable on the environment and the economy. And there was a few people left on that environment committee, and I joined up. And so that's how I had the time. And then of course it became my baby, and we were working with other people who were supporting, and when my job became full-time, when we had children and then my job became full-time, it still was something that I really wanted to put a lot of, and I think my former employer, the Manitoba government, doesn't really know how much they supported the operations as well. And my family did. I mean, my husband was very supportive in looking after the children while I was busy doing some other things. Between that and the fact that my job involved a lot of travel as well, I really appreciate what he did to support the family.
Well, that's so wonderful, and it's when you can have that like a partner that really will support you, you know, as a woman, because as a woman you have all these desires, the same desires and excitement that you have as a young person wanting to, you know, continue in your ambitions, and when you have somebody that can really support you, you know, in doing this, it's just
it takes a village. You know,
really
it
does.
definitely takes
Yeah.
a village, and my husband wasn't necessarily, you know, that thinking, oh, I'm supporting the cause by doing this for you. He was just supporting our family and willing to do it for me because he knew that was something that was important to me. So, and I mean, I had children later in their life, so I was really well established in some of that stuff, and I didn't really want to let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And talking about a village, you know, something like the Environmental Council and the Recycling Centre, it must, the number of people that are getting you from where you were in 95 or 93 to now.
Exactly. Well, you know, there were people on that committee that were saying, you know, the committee was really designed to talk about environmental issues. Like there were concerns about what's happening at the company and concerns just about general environmental issues. But we needed something to do, right? To you know, you don't just yak about, you need to also do something active. And recycling was really coming into its place in different places in the country. And so while I did a lot of the work looking and, you know, finding connections and getting information from people, couldn't have done it without other members of the committee, you know, like Jan Modler's been there from the beginning. Greg East was great with fundraising and buildings and all that sort of stuff, and we had
They're the pros.
Yeah, and then we had Mayor Graham Craig from the city of Flin Flon, who was really supportive.
What a dream team you had.
Well, but then there were other real challenges along the way, and a learning curve for us, because, you know, I sort of thought, well, this is a cause, we just make do, instead of start making decisions that were responsible financially, you know, like when we just about had to fold in 2008, 2009, when the economy went south, we were living on the sale of product, and the sale of product went south. I mean, they wanted us to pay them to take the cardboard, and so we just about didn't make it through 2 years, and I think that helped us to sort of gain a grip on what it was, but I also think it made the municipalities realize that there needed to be more. And so we started making some smart business decisions, even though we are a nonprofit corporation. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. So what do you think your biggest challenge has been, and your biggest success?
Well, I mean, the success of the recycling program and how well it's established, and how it's really coming to its own in our community is a success. And I think there's been many people who've helped, but being a champion is, you need a champion that other people are supporting. On the other hand, we could have wanted to recycle as much as we wanted to, and nobody wanted to do it. It would have fallen right through. So I mean, it's really everyone's success. I think the challenges are the bigger picture environment stuff. You know, the environment is a very complex issue. You know, you have people who go and study environmental studies, and one will work for a company trying to figure out how to best, you know, do their business with least environmental damage, or make sure the environment is monitored and all that sort of stuff. And their classmate will be out there in an advocacy group saying, you shouldn't be doing this. You know, so it's really complex that way. Personally, I struggle with some of the inconsistencies, you know, like we have so many plastic bags that come in and out of the recycling center, and yet plastic bags are not really recyclable. And so, I mean, we use as much as we can.
Yes.
You know, we really want, but that's just an example of, a small example of some of the challenges that being on the environment thing has, because with every sort of problem you solve, then you have a different one that comes along. You know, like we're getting the recyclables to the center, we're managing them well, but that happens because people use a bag that we just rip open and throw away.
Right.
So, always challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love your red bag service.
Oh yeah.
I love it. You know, at the very beginning, I was going, well, you know, I'm going by. I could just drop off, you know, like every week at the recycling center in my clear blue transparent bag, whatever. But then I was said, that's it. I'm gonna buy these bags, and it was kind of a game changer. I don't know why it seems so luxurious. It's so much easier just to bag and leave it on the end of our.
Well, I even leave mine in Creighton because
Yeah.
we have it in Creighton, and I don't bother hauling it into my car to work. I just leave it out
It's
for
just
them
a
to take.
Beautiful
Yes.
service. Maybe explain a little bit what the people that are.
Well, the
watching.
red bag is a way of making it convenient because we pick up at the curb. Unfortunately, we have to pay the costs of it. So say like Creighton and Denair Beach, it's paid out of the municipal budget, right? So we have to charge the $3.50.
Yes.
And every
Per bag.
per pickup.
Per pickup.
Per pickup, because then if you pay for a red bag, the
Yes.
$3.50, we will pick up, we say 2 red bags, but
Yeah.
we'll take what's there.
Yeah.
So if you have a red bag out, we know you paid for it, we'll pick
Yeah.
it up and we'll take it back to the recycling center. A lot of people though, that $3.50 is a barrier.
Okay.
The survey we did a couple years ago, people don't really want to pay that $3.50. I mean, it's not that much money. But so the red bag program is not real well used. It's used enough, and it's important for people who can't drive or
Right.
who have issues about getting to the
Right.
center or to the trailer. But it's
worth it if you have the money. It's a game
and you
changer.
just have to remember Wednesday morning,
You-
right?
yeah,
Wednesday
that
morning.
you might need a buddy system, but it's doable.
Yeah.
You can do it. What advice would you give? Well, I think we've kind of given them some advice.
Some
for
advice.
women that want
Yeah.
to pursue a career in.
Well, I would
Environmental.
encourage women to choose a career, but I would encourage women everywhere
Yeah.
just to think more about the environment. People who are choosing careers, go for it. I mean, it's something that's very needed. It's interesting that the issues that were an issue when I was first getting involved are still issues.
Right.
You know, I read the book Planet in the Balance by Al Gore, and in the 1950s, his professors were talking about CO2 buildups in the atmosphere. So it's something we need, I would say, be informed, listen to other people. Sometimes just having a few little catchphrases, and then if people catch on, you can talk some more. If people turn you off, I remember as a young person having arguments with my family members, and I mean, that gets you nowhere.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
just know what you do, live it, pass it on to your kids. Although we've had a lot of parents come and say, my kids made me do this,
Yeah.
or my wife made me bring this, you know. So you know, women on the ground are important, and there's such a variety of environmental, whether it's finding new ways to do things, you know, replace single-use plastics versus just what you do in your home with your leftovers,
Yes.
or how you get places,
Yes.
bicycle, or, you know, walking, or, you know, those kinds of things. Think globally. Think about, our slogan is think globally, act locally. And you know,
Ooh, I like that.
be aware of the big picture and do what you can where you are.
Yeah.
Don't get overwhelmed,
Yeah.
because it is complex, and I look at so many different inconsistencies in my life even, you know, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't start. Or you shouldn't keep trying, and just do what you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there we are. We have, again, Deb Odegaardn from Flin Flon's, is the proper title?
Well, we run the recycling center, but it's the
Recycling,
Flin Flon and District Environment Council is the nonprofit organization that's
District
responsible.
Environment Council,
Yeah.
yes. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being part of this. We're so
Oh.
happy to honor you, and wish there's hundreds of women, of course.
I'm
just,
so
you know,
honored to be
everywhere.
asked. Exactly.
So, but we'll do this every year. I think it's just something we're going to do, and because everybody has such an interesting story, and that we want to share and tell. And we should do it for the guys too.
Oh
Maybe
yes,
Father's
you know,
Day. We should do
as much
something.
as this is a women's issue kind of thing, or Women's Day that
Yeah,
we're
for
focusing
sure.
on, I can name so many men
Of course,
who
yeah,
have been really
yeah.
big part of it as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. So anyways, thank you, Deb,
you're
and
welcome.
thank you everybody for watching. So we're going to have a cup of tea right now with one of my favorite environmentalists and herbalists, Danielle Yungwirth, and she'll talk a little bit about the tea that we're drinking right now. But we're going to be chatting all about the environment, because she is passionate about the environment, and she's many new things that she's going to be doing in the community with that. So this is Danielle Yungwirth, and we're celebrating Danielle for International Women's Week, and we're just going to have a chat about the environment. So Danielle, this is so great having you here. We have Danielle working with us with the Flin Flon Arts Council for the last year, and I've learned so much, and I've just enjoyed working for you. How did you get down the path to learning so much about nutrition and herbalism and the environment?
You know what, honestly, I think it stemmed from my love of the environment, and then it just kind of spiraled from there. The more that I learned about the environment, my uncle created the local 350 group, like way back, it would have been like the early, like 2010s, kind of like in there, and I was just really, really passionate about things, and I used to make up things.
The 350 group.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I used to make up like little posters for my parents on like how we could conserve energy and like what we could recycle and like stuff like that. And then I went to university for environmental biology. And I started, like, the more that I learned, the more passionate I became about it. And then I started to see, like, the connection between the health of the environment and the health of us and as humans. And then it just keep learning all of the things.
Wow. Well, it just, I'm always amazed with the knowledge that's out there. And I find like there's almost been a generation where we've missed it. Like I think of my grandmother, coming from the old country, from Poland, and all the knowledge that she would have known of the herbs and the flowers, and that would be able to heal you when you didn't have medicine, and that seems to be coming back. There's like we all know have chamomile tea, and it can relax you before you go to bed, but how have you been able to incorporate that into your life?
Yeah, I think it started off like really small with like, a tea here and a tea for this there, and kind of experimenting with different things. And when I found that it really started kind of like taking up more space in my life was when I was actually in university, and we would go on field trips for a lot of my botany classes and stuff. And our teacher would say, oh, by the way, you can use this for that. And that is what really sparked like the actual herbalism aspect of things. And then, of course, like having Kelty come here the multiple times and all of those things just really kind of like propelled me forward like on this path. And yeah, like I said, it started off with teas, and then I started making salves and some topical things, and then I started with tinctures, and it just escalated from there. More books I read all the time.
It's amazing. There was a group that's women organized here called Soul Sisters. There was an outdoor camp that I had attended, and there's just this whack of information that I just know very, very little about, and it was wonderful just to look at these roots and whether it's yarrow or whatever plants that are around there that that are readily available.
Yeah.
You're hungry. You could eat that flower. It might be blooming in your living room.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know this stuff, and I think all of the ancient cultures from around the world had their medicines, and their ways of preparing these plants, but also they included them nutritionally just in their diet. So something like young fireweed shoots. I mean, you could fry those up in like garlic and butter and like delicious, right? Or fiddleheads and things like that have a medicinal purpose, but were also just used nutritionally and just naturally incorporated on a day-to-day basis.
It's so interesting. I don't even know what a fireweed shoot looks like. Jacob's gonna look at it, and we're gonna put it on the site. Yeah, and definitely, I can't get enough of plant walks. I just loved it, whether it's walking with you or when we were with Kelty or whomever, and just going through the forest and just seeing what is actually out there. Because oftentimes when you're in the boreal forest, you think that it's kind of looks very green, very barren, but there's things everywhere out there, and it's kind of fascinating. So tell me, what's the difference between herbalism and permaculture? Some people think it.
Well, from my understanding, my knowledge in permaculture is shallow compared to a lot of other people out there who are like really like immersed in that world. But to me, permaculture is gardening in a way that you're thinking about the connections between everything. So everything in your garden is serving a purpose and has a relationship between each other. So these things might really like to grow together. And whereas other two things might just be like a total no-no, right? Like it could actually hinder their ability to grow. So, and I think that when we're exploring herbalism, you can look at herbalism from, I don't want to say a shallow perspective, but
A novice.
but a little bit less depth of knowledge, and you can look at it as a this for that kind of thing. Take this herb for that ailment or whatever, or you can look at it as there's a relationship between humans and plants, and the more that you kind of explore herbalism, the more that you see the relationship between those things and how we're all connected. So it's like a subsection of permaculture, essentially,
So, one of the things that I realized that even with my minimal knowledge is that things like dandelion, like my husband, it's an all-out war, you know, there's about the dandelion, and yet I'm kind of impressed with the dandelion. Like I'm just, you know, I'm impressed, and my sister made a beautiful jelly out of the dandelion flowers, and we know we can eat dandelion leaves, and that's just one little minimal plant, but there's things like plantain that I didn't know about the healing properties of that. And that's kind of profound information to have.
It is, and I love that word, like profound, and I think that learning herbalism is helping people kind of like reclaim their selves and reclaim like their health and wellness. And it's this very like powerful thing to know that you could grow a bunch of things in your garden, and you could make a salve out of this and a tea out of that, and use all of the parts, like say dandelion, right? You know, I'm always the person where like I'll totally come take all of your dandelions. And I'll like pull them out right by the root and like make dandelion root coffee and stuff like that.
You can make a dandelion root coffee?
Yeah, there's coffee substitutes that a lot of the time it's dandelion root and burdock root.
Danielle, we have bags of dandelion root.
Yep.
I'm going to try it.
Yeah. You just have to roast it first.
Okay.
Yeah, that's how you kind of get like the most like nutritional value.
I am definitely going to try that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. I had no idea about the root. So, in terms of your role as a woman in our community and all the things that you're trying to do, how do you sort of manage it? You know, and I know you're a super ambitious person and involved with so many different projects. Like, how do you stick that into your role? She's business. We want to talk about your business a little bit, all of the things that you create, as well as working for the Arts Council.
I think the biggest key with everything is that I see the connections between all of the things that I'm doing and all the things that I'm working on. So to me, it feels effortless and just feels like natural. That of course these things they have a relationship between each other, so it just feels natural to, even though to other people they might seem like kind of random things that I'm doing all at once, they're all connected in some way, and mostly like through nature, the environment, the earth, everything's kind of based around that, so yeah.
So there's a project that we're hoping to get off the ground this year. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that, if it's premature or not, but we're really excited about it.
Yeah, I mean it's very early, but yeah, we're hoping to start up a community garden this summer. So that is incredibly exciting, and you'll see once it's up and running, what I mean about exploring the connection between everything, because the community garden, you think of, okay, we're growing food, but it's food, it's people's mental health, like coming and nourishing the garden and being able to connect with people, and even amidst a pandemic, being able to be outdoors and still chat with people from a distance. It's improving food security, including like teaching people about organic gardening practices. Right. So it's tying in that environmental aspect. We're going to talk about foraging. We're going to be growing some herbs that grow in our region, we're going to have them in the garden so we can teach people about, hey, if you find this, this is what this is for. You can also grow it in your garden. So it's a little bit of herbalism, a little bit of nutrition, a little environmental education, you know, a little bit of almost going into politics a little bit as well, right? In terms of food security and how the system is structured and how we can improve on those things. So yeah, it's a little bit of everything. And art, like everything.
We're going to be having, there'll be fun things with that as well. The one of the things I'm hoping, you know, we pursue it, is that it'd be nice to have somebody that's always there that you can come and talk to about your plants or what's happening with them. Because I know for myself, and my sister's not right beside me. In my house, the agreement is the plants tell me when they're thirsty, and I give them water. I feel sorry for them, and we have a relationship, but I love them. I love every single one of my plants, and you know, I'm rooting for them.
Yeah.
but to have somebody in the community, I go to somebody like Mary Wright, who is just Dr. Mary, we call her in our house, for all of our plants and help and it's nice. Would be nice to have a place where there's people there regularly throughout the summer that you can just go and chat about. You know, I you know, why is it, you know, year 6 that my, you know, strawberries and you know, whatever the case may be.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah. Yeah, we'll have staff there every day, and of course I'll be there as much as possible. I want to be there like lots, and hopefully like teach some really good workshops and stuff. But then also being able to learn from other plant aficionados, right, of all different levels, and you know, that's something that I've really loved. I used to work at the Garden Spot seasonally, and that was beautiful. Like that's where I've also learned a lot of stuff that I know is through other people in Flin Flon, who you get all these little bits of wisdom, and it all comes together and kind of creates this.
You're so right, because as I was starting to learn about this, you know, the expertise of, there's one of my board members, his son has been doing this amazing growing, you know, in his on his property of you know, vegetables, and this I can't even explain. You would understand it, but it just makes me aware that people are really passionate about this. And you're right. There's a lot of expertise in the region that, you know, people can come and you know, be part of the sharing.
Yeah, be part of something really big, and something that's benefiting everyone, and you know, people will be able to get produce for free. You know, it's always great if people can volunteer a little bit of their time, but nobody's ever going to be turned away. It's really just about providing things for the community, improving access to nice, natural, organic produce, regardless of financial status, right? And regardless of, you know, some people live in apartments. They want to grow things, but they can't. So maybe they want to come volunteer at the garden and share their, because they still have knowledge too, even though they might not be able to grow anything.
Well, I think my mother-in-law is just like the queen of tomato plants, and she's moved into assisted living and in a larger city. And I know this was a huge passion of hers for years. And I just to be able to glean that knowledge from people that are, and it's people, especially people in our area, in this northern climate, you know, they just have knowledge about what can grow in this region. In terms of sort of supporting the community at the large, I think you've had a few conversations with the food bank, because they also have a community garden. I believe that they started a year ago, and I think this will be a really nice, you know, a way of sort of supporting that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's gonna be a really nice addition to the community for sure. Yeah, I'm excited.
Well, Danielle, thank you so much, and we thank you and appreciate everything you're doing in our community. And she's involved with the Pine Root Mural Festival, as well as. If you're looking in Winnipeg, you can't take her, but she's an amazing assistant director in her production. She's involved with everything. So thank you again, Danielle.
Thank you, Crystal.
And I hope you enjoyed this segment for the International Women's Week in Flin Flon.